Hi, this is Rick Merino. I'd like to welcome you to the program called Learning, Leading, and Living, Educating the Whole Child. When a child enters your classroom, she'll have an interest in a wide variety of activities and subject areas, and there will also be areas where she's less interested. So what are some of the goals of whole child education? And how do we support the development of the whole child? Next time when we get together, we'll talk about the 5 selves. When we develop curriculum, we need to consider what is appropriate developmentally and culturally. Some very important goals are that instruction be meaningful and integrative, and that what the students learn is based on their interests. So how do we get to know the whole child? I noticed a few of us teach in Patterson Public Schools, so I developed some charts based on the census data for the population of Patterson. So what do these charts tell us about our students? We can look at them from a demographic background, or we can consider their income levels. And we might also consider whether they come from a 1-parent household or a 2-parent household. So these charts give us a lot of useful information about our students and their backgrounds, but what do these charts not tell us about our students? Whole child education and progressive educational philosophy in general was popular during the first half of the 20th century. Then, in the late 1950s, during the Cold War era, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, which led the U.S. government to prioritize education in the areas of math and science as a matter of national security. John Dewey is considered the father of the progressive movement of education, and today we'll be reading some of his work and discussing his philosophy of educating the whole child. So what are some of the social, political, and economic issues that influence our students? So now we're going to get into our groups and compile lists of issues that affect our students, and then we'll all get back together and compare our findings. I hope you've enjoyed taking part in the first section of Learning, Leading, and Living. And I'd like you to prepare answers to the following questions for our next section. What are your beliefs about educating children? Should we teach values, and if so, what values ought to be taught and how? Also, please read chapters 9 through 11 and chapters 13 through 15 of Whole Child by Hendrick and Weissman, 2009, 9th edition. Thanks for your participation, and I look forward to seeing you in the next section. Welcome to Section 2 of Learning, Leading, and Living. Today we focus on the 5 selves: the physical self, the emotional self, the social self, the cognitive self, and the creative self. We also need to be concerned with the physical safety and health of our students. Some questions we might ask are, what are some of the safety precautions that are handled well here at our school? And what are possible hazards that warrant our attention? Some hallmarks of an emotionally healthy young child are learning to separate from the family without undue stress, learning to conform to rules, being able to become deeply involved in play, and developing the ability to settle down and concentrate. What do your students' social networks look like? We know that the social learning that happens with students occurs when they interact with one another. Establishing self-control is an important element of early childhood education. Studies have shown that children who are able to self-regulate at a young age have more success in school later on. We'll be looking at approaches to supporting the cognitive self. Those three approaches are the information approach, the emergent constructivist approach, and the conventional approach for teaching mid-level abilities. We'll also be discussing Piaget's stages of development. Being creative does not mean you have to be the best artist. According to Gardner, the creative arts are a valuable way of supporting interpersonal intelligence. It's important for the students to learn how to express themselves creatively. Please read Making the Case for Whole Child Education, which is published by the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development, as well as Chapter 1 of Beginnings and Beyond. Thanks for your participation, and I look forward to seeing you in the next section. Today we're going to try to apply what we've learned in the last sections about whole child education to specific age groups and developmental stages, from pre-K to elementary and from middle school to high school. At the pre-K level, students should be learning to be generous and altruistic, and they should be able to share equipment, experiences, and people with other children. There are typical ages where most children develop social behaviors. By the end of a child's 5th year, he may recognize rules and be more compliant, or have a very strong sense of right and wrong, or engage in elaborate pretend play with friends. By the end of the 6th year, a student may be curious about the adult world or occupations. By the end of the 7th year, a child may have developed more self-control and may use teasing and exclusion as a form of aggression. By the end of her 8th year, a child may have developed the ability to work effectively with peers and may work best in small groups. Although there's a great amount of variability in development, by middle school, students will have developed abstract thinking and logical reasoning, and the ability to consider alternative possibilities and solutions. Ted Sizer was a founder of the Coalition of Essential Schools and was a proponent of whole child education at the high school level. The principles of CES include that students should learn to use their minds well and be seen as valued members of the community, and that teachers should act as mentors rather than deliverers of knowledge, and that instruction should emphasize depth of subject matter over breadth. Welcome to Section 4 of Learning, Leading, and Living, Educating the Whole Child. We will be discussing how to apply whole child education philosophy to particular subject and content areas. In math class, we should support visual spatial intelligence and understand that when students write things down and draw them, they remember them better. The use of manipulatives in math is also helpful with retention. Developing predictions and hypotheses are part of the scientific process. Students learn 90% of what they say or discuss as they complete an activity, and 90% of what they teach to others. So encouraging students to talk with one another when they're attempting to make a prediction or a hypothesis helps them to construct their understanding of a subject. Students can learn self-awareness during literature reading. We can teach them to identify books that are too hard, too easy, or just right. This kind of activity eventually leads to written reflections, which then helps them become aware of their own changing abilities. Prior to this section, we were to have read Chapter 5 of The Whole Child by Hendrick and Weissman, 9th edition. The IDEA says that each child with a disability is entitled to a free public education, and that each of these children will be provided with an individualized education program. The question we'll discuss today is, what are the disadvantages of labeling students as different? The arts allow us to reach our students and to integrate subjects in very powerful ways. Dewey's 1906 definition of arts education states, "To feel the meaning of what one is doing and to rejoice in that meaning, to unite in one concurrent fact the unfolding of the inner life and the ordered development of material conditions. That is art." Before the next section, please prepare and teach lessons that demonstrate the characteristics of whole child education in your classroom. Then, be prepared to share and assess your lessons with others during our next section. Welcome to Section 5 of Learning, Leading, and Living, Educating the Whole Child. This section focuses on bringing the philosophy of whole child education into our school and out into the community. For the first half of this section, we're going to group everyone together by subject area and have you discuss your lessons with your colleagues and make assessments and share ideas. Then we'll get back together. Following that, I'd like you to go around to your colleagues who teach different subjects and see how they interpreted whole child education in the context of their subject area. As our discussion of whole child education draws to a close, we may ask ourselves, what's next? I've included some resources here. If you are watching this as a video on YouTube, you'll find links in the comments section below. Thank you so much for participating in this professional development, and I look forward to working with you throughout the school year in our efforts to bring whole child education to our school and to our community.